This meeting is called to order. Welcome to the Voter Registration and Outreach Committee of the New York City Commissioners of Elections. This is our first committee meeting of 2015. Will each commissioner please introduce yourself?
Michael Rendino, Bronx County Republican Commissioner.
Simon Shamoon, Kings Republican.
John Flatteau, Kings County Democrat Commissioner.
Alan Shulkin, Manhattan Democrat Commissioner.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is for each of our commissioners to open up with their thoughts and ideas on voter registration and outreach for the New York City Board of Elections.
We'll start with the right.
Floor is wide open. Right,
Well-
left, center.
Okay, I'm just glad that we're moving towards transparency so the public can participate and help us do voter registration and outreach. And I think this is a great idea, holding a public meeting. And I have no particular ideas yet. I'm here to learn myself. And I'm sure the League of Women Voters will be very helpful in instructing us, as well as the other commissioners. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Voter registration and outreach is a very important committee to the extent that the public needs to be engaged in the process and for them to have the ultimate participation of participating in the electoral process, they need to be registered, and there are timelines and deadlines. So our outreach throughout the year is very important to the public. There has been a new law that has been passed, Local Law 9, that encourages or mandates various agencies to provide voter registration forms to people doing business with those agencies. That will hopefully increase the numbers of people having access to forms. People should know that our forms are available at our offices, at now city agencies, on the website, and various other public offices throughout the city. 2015 will be a year that will be on the quiet side in terms of election events, so that should really be an opportunity for us to conduct as much outreach as possible with the resources we have. And voter registration and outreach is very important, so that with the presidential election coming up just around the corner, that people are registered in a timely manner. And it's our job to really make sure that everybody knows of the resources and the agency's ability to register people and about any election that comes up. So I'm happy that we're meeting early in the year, and I look forward to subsequent meetings. I think an idea that Commissioner Flatteau and I have is reaching out to some high schools on a pilot program basis and educating our youth as to the system, the process, and hopefully get them engaged so that when it comes time for them to register to vote, they know just how to do it and where to go. So those are my remarks for now. Commissioner Andino.
Hello, welcome everyone. Just want to say it's great to be here again for a second year on the Voter Registration and Outreach Committee with Commissioner Shimon. Welcome to Commissioner Flatteau and Shulkin. Last year was my first year on the committee. We had a lot of different ideas that we brought up, and a couple of them we implemented. One of the social media team, some of their ideas that Val runs and does a great job with, came out through that meeting. It's not just about voter registration, but outreach as well, and we've used that opportunity in the Bronx to get out and tell them what this agency's about, and clear up a lot of misrepresentation about this agency that we're just 2 days a year. Tell them about what goes on a regular basis, plus opportunities for employment at the Board of Election. And we've done that by breaking down the borough by community boards, tenant associations. Anytime an elected official is having a day out, we made sure we'd send out 2 representatives, a Republican and a Democrat. And I think that's something we should look to start doing more citywide. The school idea is fantastic. we had talked about doing a comic book. We've met with, we're gonna have some proposals at some point in this committee during the year for younger kids. He's done it where he's used superheroes of city agencies, and possibly something we could do to grammar schools to teach them a little bit about civics and stuff. Something else we could explore. I know schools don't teach about civics these days. We've had conversations in the Bronx with some of our local teachers about putting together even civics lesson plans, or maybe sample ballots, or maybe even making packets to send to the schools around election time, just to kind of drum up some interest and allow them to teach it and get more involved in the process. But these are all things we could talk about during the year.
Thank you. And I'll comment briefly. One of the reasons I joined this committee, and I'm a very new commissioner, I've been here less than 6 months. But when you look at our election statistics, voter turnout has been on the decline in New York City. And I think that's a very serious matter, and that's one of the things we need to sound the alarm about. We have over 4 million registered voters in New York City, but in the last 2 general elections, in the mayoral election in 2013 and I believe the gubernatorial election in 2014, we had barely a 25% turnout. Barely 1 million voters of the 4 million who were already registered did not come out to vote. So that says that outreach and communication are very important. And I'm hopeful that I can help as a member of this committee to increase voter participation in education. Recent or older mayoral elections had 50% turnouts back in the 80s, if you go back even further to the Wagner area, they had over 60% turnouts of the New York City electorate. So we have a long ways to go, a lot of work to do, and commissioners, so I believe the ideas you've already mentioned, if we could just grab a hold of half of those and find the resources and have our management team lead us day to day, that we'll have a healthier voting democracy here in New York City. So the next item, perhaps we have representing us from management, our management team, Ms. Valerie Vasquez, who is our Director of Communications, and we know that you've done some of the work, Commissioner Rendino, in this area. Maybe you could enlighten us as to what's happening with our agency in this regard.
I just wanted to thank the commissioners for having me, and really, I know I can
Might
speak.
need to be on the mic.
I think it's the audio, as
We're
far as the
okay?
audio, yeah, as long as you have, it catches the audio, you're fine. I also wanted to specifically thank Commissioner Rendino, and we speak on probably like a daily, almost a daily basis, because he really, public education and outreach is very important to him and to the borough and to the borough as a whole. I'd like to start by going back to 2010 when we first implemented the voting system and how successful our outreach was then. Being cognizant of the fact that we had over a $6 million budget then, so we were able to not only earn media but paid media. One I think of the most important aspects of the outreach campaign in 2010 was the availability of the trucks that allowed us to proactively go borough by borough and literally plug in our voting systems, whether it be in community boards, places of worship, schools, senior centers. It was very, very successful. And I feel that part of the limitations that we have when we are reaching out to organizations and asking that they have us to conduct these demonstrations is hands-on. Us going there without the machine is very limited. Sadly, it speaks to the voter turnout. Many people haven't had one-on-one time because they haven't even used the voting system. There's some apprehension when we visit senior centers. Some of the seniors are not comfortable with it. So our idea back in 2010 was to give that level of ease to the voters by providing this hands-on time. One of the things that I'd like us to do, maybe we can talk about it, is actually, when we go before the council, as one of our budget needs, is that we have a budget in place for outreach. Right now, the board is limited. We only have a budget for our paid legal ads, which take place, are ads that we have to take out in the various covered languages, simply informing voters of the upcoming election. So there are only 2 times in which we can place ads in which we're funded. So I think budget is a big part. I'd like us to also be more systematic in terms of having, perhaps like we did, mirroring what we did in 2010, where we had the council maps, for example, citywide, and made sure that we reached each corner, each part of the district, of the city, of each borough. Working with elected officials, I'd like us, since we have a new class of council, elected officials in general, but we should do borough open houses, where we could do a meet and greet perhaps with our commissioners and our borough elected officials. We could have a demonstration there of the voting system. We can talk about the functions of the Board of Elections to try to overcome that misconception that the board only works 2 days out of the year. And if we could, in fact, ramp up the outreach, we could resurrect the mechanism which we reached out to. We sent mass blast emails to all our community groups. We encouraged them to set up events. So what we did was we worked very often with the League. We worked with the Center for Independence of the Disabled. And basically, we had that buy-in. So they were basically stakeholders with us. So it wasn't necessarily just the board coming in and conducting these demonstrations. We were partnering with you. So not only help us spread the word. So send out blast emails to your constituency. And I think that really helped. It formed relationships, and unfortunately, because of the lack of funding, some of that has come to an end. So if we could get the funding for at least a minimum of some trucks so we can do the outreach, I think that would be very helpful.
Any questions or comments for Valerie?
Just, I agree with you, we do need to start looking, I mean, 2015, this next year might be a little slow, but it's a good time to get out there and educate the public. But we need to definitely have a budget in place for the presidential in 2016. I know when I got here, I looked at turnout numbers, just like Commissioner Flateau was saying, and I said, well, what can we do? You know, we can't control who the candidates are, we can't control the weather, we can't control the issues of the day, but we can control the process and how they view the Board of Elections and their experience with us, and that's something I know the board has worked at, the commissioners, Mike Ryan, who we've done the best we can to make it an easier and most friendly experience, almost voting, as opposed to all the misconceptions that were out there. So that's something we need to look at with voter turnout, and like you said, emails, text, those are things, I don't know how much we've used them in the past, but with everything geared towards more of even mobile, we need to start looking into how we can reach them through that medium.
I think something that prevents some voters from actually voting on election day, it might be a small part of it, but I think it's a part of it, is the fact that they might not be comfortable with the machines. Maybe somebody that has had a long history with the Lever machines thought it was easy breezy, and now it's computers and it's a Scantron, and you're filling out all forms and things like this. And so the experience, without maybe not having done it, or maybe having it done once and when the machines were rolled out, has not gone over well. Perhaps we can inform and educate the public somehow, and maybe it's a news story or a press release about how long, and it might take a study to do this, but in 2010, the procedures for voting on the new machines was a little different than it is now. You don't have individual voter cards anymore. The machines have been coded so that they're more efficient. We've gone to great lengths to make sure that the font size is more legible. And so, when we got together and thought of all these ideas, we were thinking in terms of shaving a few seconds here and a few seconds there. And I'm hearing it anecdotally out in the field that it's getting better. And maybe Ms. Gray can speak to that as a coordinator. But I'm getting that sense. And so maybe we can say, hey, how long did it take you to vote back then? And now we've made a lot of little changes, and this is what it takes to vote now. And part of this committee is to, in terms of outreach, is to let the public know that the process of actually voting, which is everybody, you know, your ordinary voter is locked in on that idea. They don't know that this agency operates and exists and has a budget and employees, full-time, part-time, poll workers. They know that when election day comes, they want to know where the poll site is, they want to get in and out quickly, and they want their vote to be counted. And so if we can educate the public and let them know that the process is getting better, and we're continuing to make it a better process and an easier process and a faster process, then hopefully that will encourage some people who had some misgivings about the process earlier. Maybe it would give them a chance to give us a second shot in terms of participation on election day.
Yeah, I would just like to follow up with what you were saying, is that I think we probably should be doing what I used to doing in politics, is doing a poll, find out why people don't want to vote, or why they don't come out to vote. I think one of the reasons is probably because people are afraid of the machines. That's a good reason that possibly people are afraid of. But there has to be a reason. Out of, we said 4 million people,
Yeah.
only 25% of the people actually show up. I think we have to follow up with this and find out why they don't show up. I mean, obviously some people are apathetic, but I think that most people are not, and they want to take part in government. They just, maybe the polling places are too far from the houses, or maybe the machine's intimidating, but we have to find out. We can't just guess as I'm doing right now, and I think that a poll would be helpful.
I would also like to note that our management team recently submitted our annual report to the New York State Board of Elections, and we have a copy here of the section on voter registration and outreach. And I would just ask the commissioners to take a moment. You've already looked at it. Maybe you may have some comments or questions on some of the information that's contained herein. I know I have 1 or 2 questions or comments as well. Well, I could kick off. There is it looks like a fairly extensive outreach activities list. I would like to see that broken out, I would say at least by borough,
Okay.
so that as the Brooklyn commissioner, I could get a real good sense of to what extent we are conducting outreach now, and maybe there are ways we could improve on it.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
Can I ask, can the audience here get a copy of the report to look at now?
Sure, absolutely.
So we can sort of look at it now? Awesome, thank you.
I just want to say, like, a lot of these events too, a lot of times, the board has been proactive, waiting to hear from other organizations, reaching out to us, whereas in the Bronx, we've been reactive. In the Bronx, we're proactive. We go out there, we contact them, Val has a lot of contacts, and we get out there. I don't know how many other boroughs are doing that. And I just want to introduce you to Dorcas Valentin. She's here from the Bronx office. She's in charge of our outreach and recruitment and stuff, and she goes out and she calls the community board, she calls the tenant association, she calls the bids, and then her and a Democrat, Lisa Gaddis, will go there and tell them and say, hey, look, we're here, this is what we're doing. A lot of times the registrations aren't as many as we'd like, but there's poll worker applications, there's other information, there's a lot of things going on.
I'd like to, I'm not sure we have a Brooklyn.
Dedicated?
Yeah, I'd like to steal that idea
Absolutely.
from the Bronx commissioners.
We're just talking about it.
Okay.
What is her title?
I don't know
What
what,
is your
associate,
title?
what is the actual title, but what is she? She's in charge of outreach in the Bronx. She,
Oh, you just, okay.
Val, when you did it in 2010 and you had the truck and stuff, were there any marketing campaigns, like even, I mean, I don't know what the cost would be, but it would be possible to start soliciting offers from marketing agencies to maybe talk about something like you had Vote the New Way, right? That was your slogan. and-
Right, it was market scan and vote the new way, and
Was
we
that
had
discovered
form-
internally or?
yes, that was with the help of the outside consultant Burson Marsteller. And that the $6.5 million budget that I referenced was a contract with Burson Marsteller and their subcontractors. So they did the procurement for the trucking and the leasing for us, as well as the purchasing of media buy. We were able to put in ads in subway car cards and bus shelters, and it was a very expensive media campaign. But we could, for something like that, it would be a large-scale contract and it would require a RFP, and we'd have to put out a request for bids and stuff.
So
Could we get a copy of that?
Sure. The
before-
Burson contract,
Yes. Maybe that could be a
We could put the-
template or a baseline.
for the scope of
At least
work.
something to
Mhm.
look at. I'm sure there are some ideas.
What would be the deadline to request something like that? Like, I'm sure none of us have a problem going to the city council and testifying and asking and helping you get the money and the agency get the money.
I'd have to speak to the procurement department to see what the turnaround time is for, I know it's easier if it's a firm that has done business with the city, if there's an
Already
existing contract
registered.
already, that they've registered and been vetted, it's a quicker process, but, I can find out from procurement. But we do have, Burston, part of the reason we hired them was because of their advertising expertise. I mean, and it went through there was a committee, and they were ultimately selected from the 3 vendors that bid. But, some of the things we can't, for example, we have a contract, a DCAS requirement contract with a vendor that places all of our advertisements. So if we had the budget to, let's say, place an ad if we were doing some large-scale, this hypothetical, large-scale open house, let's say, and we wanted to put an ad in the Daily News and in the Spanish as well as the other covered languages, we have a contract in place that would allow us to do that with the lowest bid possible at the lowest rate with a city plan. But it's simply that we don't have a budget in that bucket that would allow us to do so. We only are budgeted for or funded for the legal ads that we have to place. As far as trucking, we have a contract with a trucking company, but we're budgeted only for the cost of transportation for the machines on election day and the delivery back to the respective boroughs. So there are contracts in place, it's just they're not funded with the level that we would need to do the outreach that we'd like.
Well, for what you're working with, you're doing a great job considering you are underfunded and understaffed in your department.
I mean, some of the
We
things that,
appreciate it.
thank you. One of the things that, what we did demos, when we did our demos, we had something called an ice cream ballot. So voters were selecting their favorite ice cream flavor, their favorite topping. And it was something that we tried to make, it was fun. And I know Kevin can speak to it, they really helped us in going out into the boroughs. But I mean, I can even speak to when we've done events with the Center for the Independence of the Disabled, or even when we worked with CUNY for their students with disabilities. Having that, being able to go out to them, and we found that it was empowering, people felt comfortable, and it really gave them that opportunity to ask questions. I mean, some of them asked questions about the security of the ballot, things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to ask at the polls when they walk in on election day. So, and we had always hoped and told them, after this experience, this positive experience, please go out into your community and tell your neighbors and tell your friends and family to come visit us at the next event. And social media was helpful then too, because we were able to promote the events that we were having. So we were able to say, we're having an event at this senior center, please join us, and asked our stakeholders to share and tweet as well. So social media was used then, but again, it was because it was used more as a proactive tool to inform others of existing events that we're doing.
Do we know of any other city agencies that have budget kind of what we're looking for, and any ideas, maybe if we start looking into what they're using to promote
The only
them and their brand?
The only agency that I can think of would be VAC, under Campaign Finance Board, and it would be the Voter Assistance Advisory Commission. And they have a board, and they themselves also do some outside, they conduct events fairly often as well, without any machines, because they're more in terms of voter registration. So it's more about garnering the voter registration. And when they've had the education component, they've had to partner with us to bring out the machines.
I would like to mention a couple of other city agencies. One is in this building. The Department of Consumer Affairs has been doing some marketing and outreach around city services and programs that we might want to look at what they're doing. And I noticed on the New York City Economic Development Corporation, they seem to be doing some marketing around small business services, et cetera. So I think there are some other agencies out there, and they may be using outside vendors as well. I think you're right that it's quicker to piggyback an existing vendor that's already in the system as well. So I think those are some other strategies to look at.
And let's not forget our favorite, DOI. If you see something, say something. They had a
Oh, really?
outreach
Oh, okay.
on buses and stuff, so they have a.
Well, I thought that was MTA.
No, they did as well. They did as
DOI
well.
as well. If you see something, say something.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd just like also, maybe we could work with the city council, because I know they have an outreach. And I've talked to Councilwoman Helen Rosenthal, and she's very much interested in doing outreach to high school students. So I think that you could probably find every council person in the city would also be interested, and they already have a budget. So we can work to piggyback on this.
We can work, one of the things that we've done in the past, and I think we should again do this, is reach out, I would, with your approval, reach out to the council member services, and each council member sends out mailings to their respective constituency. And in the past, closer to election day, but in the past, we've worked with our elected officials, our council members, and asked that they designated a space on their newsletter to the board. And we give them content ready, and we give it to them. All they have to do is just literally place it into their newsletter. So we had the high-res images and links to our website, and we could do that again, hoping that they'd assist us because of our limited budget. We could leverage, our relationships and see if they can help us spread the word.
I'm actually surprised at this number in our agency report to the state board that in 2014, it says we printed 2 million voter registration forms and distributed 1.2 million voter registration forms. So there's a gap, there's a disconnect
I can tell you right now, there's a
somewhere.
lot sitting in my office right now.
Well,
And Beth Pasella could really speak to the voter registration.
Yes, we have a
who
voter.
would that?
Beth Pasella is the voter
Okay.
registration coordinator. She's
For the
not in today, but
agency.
I'm sure she could be at the next meeting
Okay.
and speak to that.
Plus, we have a new voter
There is a
registration.
new
voter
form
registration.
coming out, so those are all gonna be
From the
obsolete.
state
Will they
board.
still be able to
They'll
use
still
them?
be able to use them.
Okay.
Hopefully the new registration form will have email address
Well,
spot.
yeah.
I mean, no, some of them, I had some really old forms and until they could use them from
They
the
can still
office.
use them,
But there's no slot, on the old ones, you don't have the slot to put the email
One of the
address.
improvements is that, right, that there's a that there's a slot that's not mandatory, but it's recommended that they put in their voter registration form, their address in their voter registration form.
Right, I think, Commissioner Flacco, you used that email address to ask for poll workers, right?
Yep.
They used it.
Oh,
for
whether
the-
we use that email address?
Yeah, didn't you use that, or did you use the telephone numbers?
I know that we use telephone numbers. Whether or not we've used email addresses.
I think we did, right? I think Mr. Ryan indicated that we used email lists for outreach as well.
Yeah, that's a very powerful.
To recruit poll workers.
Yep.
We were able to target
sure it's on
in
there.
Brooklyn because we knew we had shortages of workers. So, and that's a very that's probably the most inexpensive way to communicate. It's a
Oh,
lot
definitely.
less expensive than the US Postal Service.
Okay.
To email blast, get a list of residents, so that's another technique. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my other boss. In my other life, I'm a CUNY professor, and I see CUNY is mentioned in there also. And I'm looking at that statistic, they requested 69,000 forms, and you actually had a way of tracking them, but I'll use the word only 8,000 came back. Now, I happen to know that there were 250,000 CUNY students And I know we have November is CUNY
CUNY
month,
month.
voter registration month for CUNY. And I'm on one of those CUNY campuses, so I can't speak for the other 23, but I know we could do more work right at a place like Medgar Evers College, which is in central Brooklyn, in terms of voter education, voter registration, and outreach. Do you have any observations about the CUNY experience?
And I speak from experience, I mean, I would say they're probably one of our best partners. Jay Hershenson and Stacey Emanuel have been absolutely amazing. We have electiondayworker.com where voters can, you can sign up to become a poll worker.
Yes, on their website.
They have that on their website. I mean, they have really, anything, we've had meetings in the past where Jay has set up a representative from every single campus at a meeting dedicated just to voter registration. So I know they're very passionate about voter registration at CUNY. They've given us space for training, for our poll worker training. So they've been very helpful.
Okay.
So
However,
could we expand that beyond CUNY?
We've reached Columbia. Columbia was one of our partners, specifically Esther Fuchs and whosontheballot.org. She was very helpful. We worked with them. We've done demonstrations at CUNY campuses. We've reached PACE has also been helpful because they're right here. But in terms of, I'm just speaking to the level of how involved the CUNY administration is on the administration on that level. They're very vested in increasing their numbers. But I would I think we should look into those numbers because I'm not sure. And we'd have to see if it was coded properly. That's another thing. If they don't use the coded application, then they're not
Right,
properly
it could be an
credited.
undercount then, you're
Correct.
saying? Okay.
Correct.
the League of Women Voters were at Baruch we were at Baruch doing a registration drive with their students. So it was a competition between the students and leagues who could get the most voters. But they didn't have coded forms.
Ah, okay.
So even though
So
they
there's no way for
registered,
us.
So the numbers
they're
are
registered.
probably higher.
Yeah.
They're much higher.
Okay.
Much higher.
Much higher. They did, they were poachers.
Excuses.
They were so cute, they were running around, but that was one thing that I would have liked, that Fanning would have been there to help the students do their registration drive. They had little gaps, but it was fun because when they missed something or we overheard something, then we had a dialogue about voter registration and the history of it, and actually, we had a wonderful day there. Jay is awesome for us as the league. But those students came to our National Voter Registration Day in City Hall Park, which was right across the street from City Council. So we got a lot of City Council people showing up and voting on what topic. Both places.
We were able to provide a machine for
Yeah,
that.
both places they had machines and staff from the Board of Elections. And I think that really does help having the process there. I mean, we got all the city, I think we got like 10 city council people to vote that day on whatever topic it was. You know, from Kalos to, who's the really tall guy?
Connie.
Yeah, thank you. And it was a wonderful day. Mark Ryan was there. You were there.
Mhm.
Were you there?
Mhm.
Yeah, here. It was busy. I was Elizabeth Cady Stanton. In costume.
In costume.
Very nice.
But yes, that does help having them.
Commissioner
Someone said something about like a new vote or something, I don't know what it was said, but it told me the idea we've talked about in the Bronx a little. What do we send new voters, other than just something saying you're registered to vote and this is where you vote?
Correct.
Maybe we should think about expanding on that, maybe talking to them about, I don't know, even letting them know that there are poll worker opportunities, interpreter, door clerk opportunities, or even though the mail is expensive though, is there a cheaper way to do it? Maybe a robocall to new voters, or an email to them saying, welcome, you've officially registered, we want to let you know we at the Board of Elections are a lot more than just election day, and kind of go into something. I don't know if that's something you want to explore, just something to throw out for the committee.
I think we could probably, I mean, I'm just speaking, I would have to, we'd have to talk
Yeah.
to MIS, and so, but I think there could be some mechanism that once we generate, or we're ready to generate that confirmation notice that's sent out, where they have the voter card, that we could trigger an email if provided, that lets them know the opportunities available. We could have the link there for them to not only join, like our Facebook, our social media pages, but they can click on the application to become a poll worker.
And I know you guys, Commissioner Flato and Shimon, had a lot of success right, with the robocalls from your workers and.
Yeah, it seems that direct phone calls is a good way to reach voters, because if you don't get them on the line, you might be able to leave a message. And so, on a limited basis, we won't bother everybody repeatedly, but if we have a message together that's really important, then we have to find a way other than mail to reach our voters, because a lot of times something isn't as important as a voter registration notice or voting, an election day notice. Just the fact that it's a card, card stock and colorful, it might get confused with junk mail and so on. And so we have to try as hard as we can to reach the voter more than anybody.
I vote very strongly about an email blast or a call saying, welcome to the voting, because so many people come in,
Personalize it.
comes into the polling place. Well, I registered to vote, but I don't know if I'm registered.
Well,
They say, I filled out the form, but I don't know if I'm registered. And then it's really sad when you look in the book and they're not there. So, yeah, a confirmation that you received their voter registration would be a real plus, I think. I don't know how you do
Well,
it.
that's difficult, I'll be honest with you.
Other
People like
than the little
yourself
letter.
Who walk in the last minute and present us with 20,000 registration forms, and then we have to process them, and we'd have to send out a letter at the same time, so it's very difficult. I don't know if it's impossible, but it's difficult.
I was gonna say the league never brings in 20,000 at a time.
You don't?
No, we bring in 10, 20 at a time.
We get some groups.
I know.
And I've heard is they usually, they like to hold it.
Yeah, no, we
at the
don't
end
do
of the
that.
year.
Any events we get it there the next day. So,
We'd like to hear a little more detail from Ms. Valentine in terms of some of the outreach efforts you're supervising in the Bronx around voter registration. Sure. You traveled all this way down here? Let's.
Yes?
Okay,
Yeah,
we-
see, that's why I brought you.
Get in front of the camera, as a matter of fact, make us all look.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of the exciting things that we're doing. And of course, with the blessing and guidance of our good friends and Commissioner Rubino. It's really fortuitous that we have such a energized team in the Bronx, myself and Lisa Gaddis, my Democratic counterpart, who go through the effort of sourcing opportunities. We're, of course, being proactive and not waiting for the invitations to come to us. But as Commissioner Medina stated, we are attending job fairs, we're out there, community board meetings, we're letting the community know about not only opportunities to work on Election Day, but also to, let's say, update their registration. Many who have moved into the Bronx recently negate that step and then are very irate when they get to the poll site and realize that they cannot vote. So it's simply to say that we're looking forward to doing a great deal more through the social media team as well, incorporating those new initiatives that you've all discussed and Commissioner Rendino is looking to.
And the public's been very receptive to you, right?
Very.
By personalizing the board and being in their face and seeing two people
They're-
who are dedicated. We give them a little bit of a script that they have, that they go out there and some question and answers, and we have them
And
prepared.
we just received
And
a
if they don't
citation
have the
recently.
information, we don't put misinformation. We give them a number, and we promise to get back to them if they're on top of it.
And I have a business card that I can share with you, something that we also distribute, and it's been part of our routine at the Bronx Board of Elections outreach events. Folks are generally, they want to know how to follow up after submitting a poll worker application, or how they can follow up on that absentee application that they just put in their grandmother's hands because she's wheelchair bound.
And
So,
it's very important to have a Republican and a Democrat, because we are a bipartisan agency, and they're making contacts and building relationships with people who run these community associations, not just boards, but tenant associations and block parties, so that they're reaching out, they know each other on a one-on-one basis, and they know if it's important to be there or not.
And we're looking at doing the same, incorporating those civics lessons into an open house format, so that we can also inform the voters of the new improvements as far as the voting process is concerned, but also give them an overall perspective on what's lacking in the schools today, which is plain old good old basic civics.
I was gonna ask that, what kind of entree do you have in the schools in the Bronx? High schools or college campuses or
We're working to
any
develop
work
that.
there?
We haven't started yet, it's, we've, actually, the borough president has, I think Marjorie Majors, her name, she's the head of his education, and she meets with the principals quarterly. So we've discussed, me and Commissioner Perez, possibly going there with Val and talking to them and asking them what resources we could give them, where somehow we could partner with them to do something. I mean, I can't envision our personnel going there and actually teaching it, because there'd be background checks, there'd be a lot of things going on, but if there's resources we could give them to have them do it, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a video, whether it's just voting materials and stuff to keep them. But we're at the very beginning on that phase.
You all know it's a state law for the schools to teach this, right?
Could you elaborate on that?
Do you remember the law?
I heard that, I attended the Election Commissioners Association Conference in Albany where that was mentioned. It's in the state education law, right? I haven't had a chance to
Yes,
look that
it's-
up. Maybe you could elaborate on that for us.
I wish I was, however, you can, Fanny.
In general terms.
It is part of what's required, but there's no question on the state test, and you know that we teach to the state test. So therefore, what would be helpful would be to have a question on the state test about voting, and in that way, the teachers would be would feel obligated to teach that part of it. There is a curriculum, we've seen the curriculum, teachers acknowledge that it's there, but because of their restraint, because of the, what they consider the things that they have to get in, that goes on the side. I should also just mention that the voters' assistants and the Department of Education have a date in March where they're going to be doing voter registration in high schools. They have started a pilot. I'm sorry to say I don't know how many schools will be in this pilot, but the idea is that they're going to go to all of that as a result of what they learn from this. The plan is to go to all high schools to have either a 1 day or a week. The school would decide how they would approach it, and whether they would have some kinds of assembly, or whether they would invite groups like us to come in and do the voter registration, which we have done in the past. We've invited ourselves as an organization to schools, and schools have done given us various opportunities, either during lunch or in their foyer, or to register the seniors. And we've tended to do it close to graduation, and as you see, they're going to do it in March, so which is a little bit probably early, so that you don't get caught up in regions and that pressure in April, right after the spring break. They're doing it before the spring break. So, but that is something that would be coming to all the high schools, whether probably leading up to the presidential, when most of the high school youngsters are really very interested in being able to select.
I would assume adding a question to the curriculum would be very difficult. I don't know how we would go about that. My wife's a school teacher though, and I do know that the principals do have a little leeway. That's why I suggested we talk to them. I know around 9/11, even though it's not required, they're given the option if they want to discuss what happened on 9/11, what happened in 2001, and maybe we should gear more towards having something like that about voting as we get into the presidential election. Although if we could get a question on the curriculum, we would support that, I'm sure. But I don't know how we would go about getting that passed.
I was also thinking maybe we could piggyback on that, not only getting people to register, but bringing the machines out here and teaching how to vote. So I think that'd be a good opportunity to do it.
Well, certainly if you could have a voter registration, there are different conferences that the young people do have. I'm not sure of how often, but I know there are a couple of organizations within the school where they bring students together from all of the different schools throughout the city, And that would be an opportunity where I could see you could bring a voter registration. And of course, they've also gone to different colleges. I mean, Fashion Institute has a day in their early registration period where they've invited us and we go there to do voter registration. But if you had a machine there for them, I think that would be even a greater trigger, reminder that they, so an idea would be to maybe rotate through schools and see if that would be another way to encourage people to register. And hopefully to vote. See, there are a lot of folks registered. There's not a lot of folks voting. To my mind, the most important part is to develop media materials that show people that voting affects their daily life. You know, you're voting for a person, they're gonna vote for a budget that will decide whether or not your garbage gets picked up twice a week, or not at all, or very rarely, or that your park gets cleaned up, or is maintained. I think those kinds of things are a way that people can really see. So I vote, so that person comes, we see them right around election, and we don't see them again until, and I don't know what they do. Because they haven't gotten me a job, nor have they improved the amount of housing that I need. And I think so jobs and housing, things that people can see, that this is what people that you vote for, these are the things that they do.
Get out the vote.
Just have to be careful on
Yeah.
who and where we do that, because we're not here to take sides, we're just here to
Oh,
Well, the league
engage
never
them. I
takes sides.
understand that, but
The leagues never take, we give you both sides of the issue. I mean, if you want clean water, you want fracking waste, do you want better schools, do you want cleaner air, cleaner streets?
it's the topic.
It's the
The
topic,
not
you
the
know.
person.
And like education, like what did we have? We had the ABCs of stuff, but,
Yeah.
you know, the reason why you vote for this person, you get to know the person, the candidate on their issue. Does that issue match your perspective on the issue? And so we have, you know, our Vote 411, where we give candidates a chance to lay out their agenda on issues, let them compare A to B, but they have to know that these decisions are made every day about how it affects their daily life. If their kids learn civics, or if their kids learned enough to pass the Regents test, or if their kids can go on to community college.
Or if there's a school in their neighborhood.
Val,
To make it personal.
do we have our stand that we have in libraries, the voter registration stands, they're kind of big, aren't they? So where we have the voter registrations and change information and stuff?
The tabletop
The
displays?
table, they're not small, they're pretty large, correct?
Yeah, well, we have on election day, the blue tabletop displays.
Is that what that is, Dorcas?
Yes.
Well, anyway, we started looking in the Bronx. One of the things we hit was when we were going to fairs for the bids and stuff, and the merchant associations, they talked about, oh yeah, if we could have something for our counters, but those things were too big for them. So we started looking in the Bronx. I don't know if we want to look at this for next meeting, kind of, and this is for you, Val, and them. Just an idea of what a sample size would be to get voter registrations. I mean, Candy Store said they'll take them just so we have a voter registration. Everywhere you look, obviously the wording, this was just done for the demo on this, but we're gonna have a slogan, hopefully, in a marketing budget for the 2016 presidential. But that should be everywhere. It should be on if we could afford billboards, if we could afford that. But it should be even when they stop in the candy store to either play numbers or pick up the newspaper, it should be right there. Do I have my voter registration so that it's available to everyone?
They used to,
We haven't started getting prices yet. We just went through size and started looking at what something like this
For
would be.
something like this, we could use an existing vendor that we have. Vanguard does all our printing. So we just have to check the contract and the scope to see what it allows for, but they do the printing for us, not only of voter registration forms, but those packages, the They shrink wrap them, they do everything, they do a processing with in-house.
Would you be willing to do that for the next meeting, to get quotes, if that's all right? To just get quotes without actually purchasing anything?
This one they just folded up.
Just to have that smaller things. The voter registrations are always in, we have big things, big stands and stuff. A lot of stores said, oh, we'll keep them in our store, we'll keep them, I mean, in the library we have them, but they're large, you know, they take up a lot of counter space. This would be just a smaller thing that would be able to stay in their face and they'd be able
For
to.
voter registration
Voter
forms.
registration forms.
I think that one of the, I mean, the large one had some of the, it has all their other forms, but the thing is, we would have to have it separated by the languages. So that would, unless we'd have to maybe have a divider, maybe it could be some type of, almost like a filing system with like a
Inside the
sort,
thing.
where you would have to have it in all the covered language, at least by borough,
So can we
so.
research that by next meeting, whether
Yeah, we
it's
can look
price,
into it.
legal, and just spend the days and we have a couple emails, see what they think on it?
Yeah.
I'll send you an email.
Yeah, we can
copy, too. I
definitely
just
do
wanted
some,
to
look into it.
Show the.
This could be a tool for disseminating the forms much more widely, you're saying. This is a countertop,
That's just a countertop thing, so it's out there.
and it's
available.
small enough that the average small business owner
What
would feel
advantage?
it's crowding out their merchandise or something of that nature. I
Correct.
get your point.
We could probably even get
Yeah.
apartment buildings to put it by mailboxes.
Something small and easy, yeah.
Mhm.
Or could we code these two, so we know the effectiveness?
I think the registrations would have. it.
The registration,
Not the box, I mean, the
the
registration
registration,
for
we
just.
could probably use the same coding that we do in-house. We use our HPWA for our in-house when we do outreach for voter registration and for poll worker recruitment.
What does that stand for?
HAVA poll worker assessments, that's what we was at the HPW, because it was HAVA. There are on our staff, there are members of the EDO department that have the title as outreach, for HAVA outreach. So they were hired specific to conduct outreach. So that's
What
what
shop are they in at our agency?
they're in our
EDO?
EDO department.
But could we add an A to find out if these boxes work? Just the regular form, and then A to make sure that we're tracking these
We could do
boxes?
some type of, yeah, we could figure out even the coding, it could be a different coding, that's something simple on an MAS and. they
No,
just
I know,
create-
but
Yeah, we could
I
create some type of
love the
coding.
idea of coding, see who,
You could
where
see
you're
real
getting-
tangible, yeah, I
and so
do.
you could do the matrix and see if that program works.
When you say the languages, do we have to have all the languages available in all the areas, or just certain
can-
areas where they hit a certain population do we need to have?
We could mirror how now we have our ballots and how we sent out our legally required mailing, so in the Bronx, it would be Spanish and English and Spanish. Queens would have all 5 languages. Brooklyn would have Spanish, English, Chinese. And Manhattan is similar, same thing. And Staten Island mirrors the Bronx as well for the language access.
Can we make online registration easier? If you wanna make registration at,
I think that's a state issue, we'll ask the lawyer on that.
can we push for it?
Could you
So
enlighten
somebody
us on
could,
that, Commissioner Shum?
Yeah, I don't know that, we don't have a mechanism in place, and I don't know that any county would for direct online registration at this point.
I don't think we've overcome the issue of the original signature. I think that's
Yeah.
part of that's the problem.
But you can
The actual, the wet signature that's required, I think was part of from what I understand. is
yeah,
the
I
problem.
understand that, but they could register, and just like the people that were missing the signature ID when they come to register, is request them to present ID to the poll worker.
But
and
then
then
present
the
ID, but then you have to capture, then have that in the poll book to compare. I mean, there's logistics that we have to go. I think that's a separate meeting in
It's
of
gonna happen
itself.
one day, but it's not gonna happen through this
Tomorrow.
committee
Right.
anytime
Okay.
within the next year. Whether we have the power to do something like that. But we would support it, absolutely.
We would too.
You probably need some legislation for
Yeah.
That's what I have.
that. Right, that's all I have. Okay.
So.
Any
if I
other
could-
comments from the public, questions,
Well,
comments?
I'm gonna offer to you, I wrote down, we did a comic book, Legal Women Voters on Voting. It's in English and Spanish. It was done in the 1960s. I have pictures, the JPEGs I could send you. They're hard because the actual comic book is in Columbia University in their archives. but the Superman, they
Can you
use,
send that to Dorcas, because,
I will send you bad
we
copies,
have,
okay?
and we have a comic book guy we're working with, and he hasn't started to develop a couple characters, they're a little controversial, so I don't have anything to show you until, but if you can look at that.
The Board of Elections had a comic book. Don't ask me what year, but they did have one, so I don't know if in your,
We have one on voting history right now because it was given to us for the event, for an outreach event that was done at the church.
A
It's a
coloring-
history of
it's a
voting in
it's a
New
coloring
York
book,
City.
yeah, yeah.
No, it looks more like
Like
a
a
comic
comic
book.
book.
It wasn't a,
Yeah, it's a comic book / coloring book.
Yeah.
They couple it with crayons for the kids. But yeah, it has history on voting, it does. It does, it has the historical information. I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
no, this one was,
Let's look at them all.
encouraging voting. But I will, I'll see if I can find it in my,
Yeah.
in my own.
One of the things, we also, one of the things that we found helpful was the collateral materials. People like, whether, what we had before for outreach, we had the wristbands with the Board of Elections phone numbers, and we had pens, and people like those type of things as well. The branded materials are usually very helpful.
Oh, let me tell you how many people love those, not the pins.
Stickers.
The
The
stickers?
stickers,
Stickers.
The
in
stickers
Park
were a hit.
Slope, they were, we ran out.
Yeah, stickers.
We
and
ran out.
stickers.
You know, it was the,
Badge
you
of
know,
honor. It's
we
like
we
the
can
Ashes on
only
Ash
give it to the
Wednesday.
kids or you know, one or the other, and they want, but we both want one, so.
any
those-
other,
I just also wanted to acknowledge, in the audience, we have a former Assembly member, Michael Benjamin, and he's also served as a deputy chief clerk for the Bronx office, so since he's joined us, I think we should acknowledge him. I don't think he had any comments, right? He was just here.
Welcome, thank you, ma'am.
any other comments from the public? Welcome, Mr. Benjamin.
When do we wanna meet?
If not, our next tentative meeting, we're suggesting a month from today, Tuesday, March 10th. 1 o'clock or 1?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock,
1 o'clock.
March 10th.
Okay,
And
also.
for my action items, you want the outreach events conducted for 2014 broken down by borough, as well as the First and Marsteller contract and scope of work. And I'll talk with procurement to see what the turnaround time is if we were to begin a new contract proposal, just a report back.
I would like
And as
us,
well as this, I'll get pricing, I'll work with Dorcas and we'll figure out some of the other things like the works.
yeah, I would like us to have an agenda ahead of time. And I would like to invite the public to also, if you have ideas of items you would like being discussed, if you make the suggestions so that we could possibly incorporate that into our agenda.
Excellent. May we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Thank you.